Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of TFT Study Hall with your hosts. I am Frodan.
And I'm Dishsoap. Hi.
And today is October 16th, 2024, and this is episode number 14 for the 1420B patch. It's a little bit of after the weekend of tournaments going into the Tacticians Cup for this weekend. And so we've had a pretty sizable patch, actually. Riot was talking about how it's supposed to be like micro changes across the board, but we've had some pretty significant shifts. So let's go ahead and talk about it. But first, I want to catch up with Dishsoap. Dishsoap, you had a little bit of a mini vacation. How's life?
I'm pretty good. Can't wait to get back and grind. I've been like avoiding ladder since like the ladder snapshot system kind of means shouldn't really be playing at all, but that should end tonight. And glad to get back on the grind pretty much.
That's right. You've been playing some of the scrims against the other Worlds and Regionals players from either past sets or current this set. How has that been going for you?
Oh, they were going really well. Like really, really well. And then I played a few like sleep deprived today. And I think I like top fourth like twice. Twice out of like the whole session. But I don't know. I was like testing comps and I was tired, so it was not a very good combo.
All right. Well, at least you're able to get some of those experiments out of the way. Maybe you can talk about some of them.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and dive into our tier list and see what's exactly on top. Okay, so starting at the very top, we got Rise, and specifically Scholar Rise being very good. And I think most people have caught on by now that 6 Scholar Rise caps really high. You get Milio as long as you like have a stable enough front line. It's very powerful. But there's also other variations of Rise that people are also playing. I mean, there's obviously Portal Rise, and then other people still trying to play other variations of Rise. So just talk to me a little bit about where Rise is. Is he really the best comp in the game, or is it just Scholar?
I think specifically 6 Scholar is like one of the most consistent ways to cap out and win a lobby. It can use like all of the AP melee 5 costs with like very effectively, and with the Scholar healing buff, like everything kind of stays alive in your team and you have a lot of DPS. So I think that's really good. 8 Portal Rise is still really good as well. They pretty much have not nerfed it the whole set, and they nerfed everything else. I mean, they even buffed it the past patch as well. So that's like super stable. But other versions of Rise, when like you don't have the 6 Scholar and you're like trying to make some flex boards, that's where it gets in like the mid territory. But definitely 6 Scholar and 8 Portal Rise are like incredible.
I've been told by some other people that they feel like Rise is like the new emblem slave in a way. Like back in a couple patches ago, it was like Varus, right? If you had Frost, if you had Pyro, if you had Arcana Blast, or whatever. This patch, it's like Rise needs a bunch of the emblems to kind of work, right? The Scholar, a Portal, a Witchcraft emblem, and make that work with Rise. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he definitely gains a big amount of power from that. The thing is, like, I don't think he's that far off of being viable without emblem. I think like Varus was like kind of hopeless with an emblem a few matches ago, but I can see Rise, like if they like nerf the top end of some stuff and like some other changes, I could see him being good without it.
Okay. This is another thing that I want to transition to as a big topic, is that one of the things that's defining the meta, and this is stepping away from the individual comps, is that a lot of people are bringing back like a bunch of Vanguard variations. 4 Vanguard X. At the very beginning of the set, it was like 4 Vanguard Mage, 4 Vanguard Blaster. And now I see some variations of people playing like Vanguard Scholar. I saw you try it out a little bit today. Is that for real? Like this 4 Vanguard like frontline in a bunch of things, including Rise?
I think it's kind of niche. I think you really need like specifically Kench 2 and like you need Kench 2 and like Xerath to make it make sense at a lot of these lines. It's pretty powerful with Wei, but I mean people used to run it with like Ari and Syndra, and those have really looked kind of weak. And there's some people experimenting with Rise, but while like it might actually be the best no emblem version to stabilize you on 8 right now, the Vanguards, it's still not going to be nearly as powerful as like the other staples of the meta.
Okay. So jury's out on that one, but a lot of experimentation. I do think that's one of the points of the meta that might innovate. For example, I do think that there's actually more mage lines experimenting with Vanguard, not just the 2. So that'll bring to our second comp. So mages, there's two variations. There's the reroll low cost where you play around Seraphine and Soraka, and then eventually get to Veigar and Vex and all them,
Mhm.
or you just go straight to Veigar Vex at a 3 cost reroll. And we talked about how Vanguards will kind of make their way through. Which variation of mage do you prefer?
I think Veigar is usually better unless you have specifically the learning dispel. I think learning dispel the one costs get kind of ridiculous because they can farm so much in the early game because it's a strong early game. Um, and then you just have like so much stats where it doesn't really matter what your team is on like stage 5. But without learning dispel, I think I generally like Veigar better because like even if you open with like Soraka or Seraphine too, the mage opener is actually really strong just for tempo now. It didn't used to be, so you can play that tempo opener and then just like pivot the items off Seraphine 2 or whatever to Veigar later.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say the one thing that you touched upon was that learning to spell gain that AP. AP does feel very crucial for these lower cost mages. And it's different than Veigar, who felt like he had so much damage you wanted to cast a lot, right? You're doing like blue buff Nashers, blue buff Shojin, just get him to spam machine gun.
Mhm.
But with Soraka, one time I tried to build her a little bit less on the AP side, hoping that it'd be okay. And she was doing okay, maybe like a humble 6, 7K. And then I eventually got my hands on an Archangels later in the game, and she like, I'm not even joking, she quadrupled her damage out of nowhere. She was doing like 25K, 28K. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe how much I was missing out. And it completely turned my game around. So yeah, get that AP source onto those low cost mages. I do want to ask another question. There's a little bit of debate. People say like, do I itemize Seraphine? Do I itemize Soraka? Right? These are the one costs.
Mhm.
And it could easily be like whatever you're hitting more of, you can itemize. But do you have a preference if you're assuming the states are equal, Seraphine or Soraka?
Me personally, no, I haven't played the line enough. What I would expect is that it's just matchup dependent. For example, like one thing I noticed is that like against people with like Randuin's augment, I forget what it's called, but the one that makes your Randuin's big.
A
uh,
movable
yeah,
object.
movable. Yeah, often they will like be very telegraphed in how they position, and they will put their carry in the center. And that's something where you can really abuse as like a Seraphine carry, where you can just put the thing on the opposite side and then be able to snipe backline. But if your opponent is able to play around Seraphine, I'm pretty sure Soraka has like more DPS. So it's probably just like a matchup dependent thing slash like what your opponents let you get away with. Because if Seraphine is sniping their backline carry, it's like Seraphine not even close.
Okay.
But I do think Soraka has more like overall DPS.
Yeah, I think because Soraka can do the single target nuke, and as you know, right now, if you try to AoE things down, unless you can like get past the Rakan and snipe the Callista reliably and do things like that, you might struggle against those super tanks. So Seraphine 3 might not be enough by herself, at least if in terms of the priority of who you itemize. Because ultimately in mages, you do want a duo carry. It's very rare you only have one itemized backline, especially by the end of the game.
What I will say though is that Soraka's not completely single target. Her spell actually kind of cleaves. Like it'll ult the target and then hit like in the radius around her. So that's something you can do to counter Soraka specifically, just like do exiles positioning. So
Ah, I like that.
if people catch on to like that, for example, and you're not getting that much value out of like the frontline cleave, then maybe Seraphine's better as well. It goes both ways.
Ah, I like it. I like it. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, and by the way, the one thing that people are trying out with, it's just very popular in Korea and it's starting to infiltrate a little bit in North America as well. But people are re-rolling Blitzcrank and Warwick
Hmm.
and playing 4 Vanguards instead of just kind of go for like the 5 or 7 mages. What do you think about that variation? Playing a little bit fewer mages and heavy on the Vanguards.
Oh, okay. There's no way you're supposed to play Warwick, right? Like
Well,
I
it's like
can.
part of it. Like they're just they're
Yeah,
like
yeah,
playing a
yeah.
cheap Vanguards to get everything online.
I really have only seen the comp succeed with Vex, and I don't think you can fit Vex with that because it's like Soraka, Seraphine, Galio, and if you're playing 4 Vanguard that's level 7, like you're not feeling Vex. I've literally only seen the comp succeed with Vex.
Okay.
I have seen people reroll Blitzcrank, and it like looked like it fell off a lot. I think especially with like learning to spell, I think the AP scaling of Vex gets a little ridiculous. Like without learning to spell, maybe, but I would assume that like more mages is better just because you get like more damage as well.
Is it always mages with learning a spell, by the way? Is it anything else besides mages?
If you're like uber contested, you can Hui. I mean, like in theory, you could like Syndra Cassio, but I'm not a fan of that comp.
Me either. I think that comp sucks.
And maybe there's some spots where you could play Ari, but the thing is like I think that augment has been like so overtuned for a while that like you can probably find success even with like the worst options. The reason it hasn't been broken in the stats until now is because like there hasn't really been like a super S tier comp to abuse it. But that effect of that augment is like best in slot in basically any type of AP reroll for a while.
Yeah, even back when Ari was at her peak, it was
Mm.
definitely like one of the main conditions you would try to lean into Ari back when we were playing the double adaptive builds from a few patches ago. So I definitely saw that.
Yeah, I remember specifically like the Lux Janicon from last set. I think learning to spell on 2-1 was like half a placement better than the next best option.
Yeah,
Which
insane.
yeah, I don't think that's like really ever the case with 2-1 augment.
All right, let's talk about the other comp. You tweeted about this
Mhm.
on your X profile, Twitter profile, whatever you want to call it. Dragon Shapeshifters is a comp that helped you kind of get back into speed. You were dominating scrims with it. 6 Shapeshifters, 3 Dragon. You're prioritizing play around Briar and Smolder, the 5 costs. And you want to use Shyvana 2 to anchor this composition. So talk to me a little bit about this composition and why it's so successful in the meta.
Yeah, I think this composition is like actually like it seems like it's like not that in depth because you end up playing the same board every game. But I actually think it's like super interesting the way you think about like itemization and how to like push your resources to go to 9. But basically, you're just like trying to utilize the 6 shapes with their HP and like kind of snap or stat check people while like you slowly whittle them down with like the Shyvana burn and like a backline carry, either like Smolder or Varus 2, and then you have like Briar to come in later. I think it's strong. The main bottleneck for this line is just being able to go to 9 with a decent amount of gold to actually hit the 5 cost. It's not always easy to do it. Obviously, if you get like the full tempo win streak opener, it's pretty nice. But even still, you would like kind of want like one of your augments to be econ to make it even easier. Definitely something that like I think it's probably a lot better on econ portals. You really just need to like be able to get 9. That's like really the main bottleneck of the comp. It's pretty weak if you don't find the Smolder and the Briar.
Yeah, exactly. I think some people have identity crisis on what to do on stage 4 in particular. I think you're right. I think the nuance of the comp is how you get from level 8 to 9 safely without one overrolling and bleeding too much HP. And it feels like a really difficult song and dance because
Mhm.
if you don't roll, that means you're playing Shyvana 2, but then you're playing a lot of like 1-star shapeshifters and maybe like a Namzi 2 in the back. That surely can't be good enough on stage 4. Sometimes it can be, depending on how the lobby dynamics are going. But a lot of people also then start rolling, but then they like roll too much and they get to 9 too little, and then they have to roll to hit maybe one of Smolder or Briar. So it's a very, very difficult comp to actually pull off when the lobby tempo is very high. So I do agree with what you're saying. I think higher econ scenarios or econ augments are ideal. I'm seeing people take double econ. It's like they take like slam in and they'll take like placebo on 3-2 or something like that to like double their chances of being able to actually hit, which I think could be really important.
Yeah, double econ is for the scenario like where you can probably just guarantee that you hit, but you probably won't cap out to like you might cap out like a third instead of a first.
Yep,
But
yep,
that
exactly.
can be worth it instead of like going 8 because you couldn't need the 5 costs.
Another thing too, by the way, is that especially if you're playing at high elo right now, it does feel like a lot of people default into that line as well because, like you said, the itemization is part of the most interesting part of the composition because you want to make items that are good for Shyvana, but that also somewhat hints towards other comps as well. So like it might because sometimes it looks like it's AP leading all of a sudden, and then like wait, all of a sudden they just slam Last Whisper or like they go into AD and you're like, wait, I thought I was kind of like only 1 or 2 weight, and that's like 4 weight out of nowhere. So you have
Yeah.
to be very careful about that.
If specifically, I think if like Gwen Fiora were like a little bit stronger, like if they were as strong as they were last patch, I think like what you could do with this line is you could like slam the Siobhan items, and then if you feel like you can't go 9, you just roll need for Fiora Gwen. But I think currently right now they're like they're fine Fiora Gwen, but I don't think they're like OP enough to justify like a full pivot anymore.
For your reference, I actually my last game on stream that I played right before we record this, I actually did a roll down on it because I had to. It was a 4-way contest. I hit Gwen 2 and Fiora, played 4 shapes Gwen with Shyvana 2 and tried to trio carry. And then I lost 3 fights in a row. I found 1 Smolder and I replaced it with 6 shapeshifter. I instantly 4 streaks. So
Yeah.
it's just to give you a frame of reference, you would think that you could maybe flex a little bit, like, oh, Nico's a witchcraft unit, maybe do this. It's six shapes plus 3 dragon smolder is just very, very powerful to help get you to 9.
Yeah, if you want to do like the Gwyn pivot, you have to like probably get out of like you probably have to go to like 2 shapeshifter or maybe even 0. But that's just like an extremely hard pivot to pull off. And like still, it's like not even worth it because as you said, as soon as you find the smolder, you're just chilling anyways. So.
Yeah, it's so much investment the other direction. But we'll talk a little bit more about warriors, I think, down the line here. Let's just quickly fire off. So Callista still S tier. Nothing has materially changed that much about Callista, right?
Yeah, I know. They like nerfed some of the parts about the comp, but then they like rebuffed it after the B patch. Yeah, I think it's good. I think she has worse matchups than she used to in this meta. Like, I think she can pretty easily lose to like really strong shape boards. I think she can lose a lot to mage boards. And then 6 Scholar Rice has always given her issues. But like she's still super strong if you get like the board with like the Morgana and the Camille and all that stuff, you're going to be really strong. But I've seen Callista go like second a lot to like mages, rise, or shapes recently. But it's still a really good comp.
Yeah, and it's still like a comp that you can even default back to if you I've seen people do actually really wild pivots. They're like in a spot where they think they can angle for one comp and then all of a sudden they get dropped like a rage blade and like, wait, I'm actually in the spot where maybe I can convert to Callista. I even saw, I think was it replay or somebody else where they literally took Pandora's on 3-2, transformed all their items hard force into a Callista spot from there, and then found a way to top 2 anyways. So if you see it uncontested and you really, really want to try to take that angle, you can actually pivot into Callista pretty often because for the most part, you just really need to hold on to like maybe a Lilia at best, just to make sure you can hit that Bastion onto that 5 fairy breakpoint.
I was just going to note that it became a little easier to play because Rakan became a lot less contested, I think. Like, he's still contested, don't get me wrong, but there's just like way less Karma players in the lobby, basically, which is the main thing. And like way less Karma and way less just like Fiora, Gwyn, Warrior, Preserver, Flex kind of stuff. So, like, instead of being 5-weight on Rakan, you might be like 3-weight, which is a big deal.
Yeah, that you can probably actually hit this time instead of be stuck on 1 star the entire time. All right, let's talk about hunters. Hunters are really popular, especially the Jinx Wukong variation. We also have a variation that's a little bit less consistent, but still very high ceiling if you're able to get Hunter on Briar. So with the buffs to Jinx being so good and Hunters, they actually had to revert this in the B patch because it was way too snowbally. Wukong Jinx, you don't even really need spin to win to make this work.
No. I mean, you know, like when this comp was viable, like a few patches ago, you didn't really need spin to win either. Because I mean, spin to win is good for sure, but it really just turns Wukong into like a secondary damage threat. It doesn't really. I don't think it makes him more tanky. Besides, like more attack speed, more like cast, I guess. But he's basically still as tanky even without the augment. And then I think just hunters in general are just doing a lot of damage, and Wukong can take pretty well against the meta. So I mean, I think that combo's good, yeah.
From my observation, and I've talked to a couple of players about this, they say that the real secret to this comp isn't just Wukong Jinx, but also having a reliable Olaf. If you don't actually have like items like Olaf, or it's like Olaf 1 and he's not like positioned thoughtfully, you end up losing a lot of fights that's like a head scratch. You're like, wait, I thought my board looks really good.
Yeah, I can see that. Olaf puts on like he puts in a lot of work, but it's like hard to notice. Like you kind of just want him to deal a bunch of damage at the start of the fight and then die. Whereas like you think you like want him to go infinite, but that's not really realistic. So you just want to like have him help you get all like the hunter resets at the start.
Don't underestimate the power of trying to get a little bit of his like early passive procs too. Some of that AoE can be really impactful. And then the other thing I've noticed is that I see people building less Sunder in that comp. They have Twitch, they say Jinx ignores armor, and so they're like almost not building it like at all. If they have bows, they'll just rather go Rageblade, Runins, and everything else. I've had situations where I see other people just ignore it completely. Do you think that's correct, or are people going a little too ham with like the I don't need Sunder because I have all these different utility sources?
I would have to do like a investigation of that and myself and like the stats, but I can see it. I could see like bow being too valuable and like the cloak and belt being too valuable for like Wukong and Olaf items. Maybe it just makes sense from like a overall itemization perspective because bows are extremely valuable in that comp. So it might just be too sus to make it on a Last Whisper.
All right, interesting. So we dipped a little bit into the A tier, talking about that hunter line. Witchcraft stats got better because they buffed for witchcraft. That early mid game seems much more reliable right now. And the cool thing about witchcraft, it does feel like actually like a little bit of a flex vertical, because you can play the rise variation. You can still go into karma. I've seen people still throw it on like warriors, for example. So witchcraft. Any notes there about that witchcraft vertical?
Not gonna lie, I haven't played this comp in like in a minute, like probably two at least two patches. But when I see people play it, I usually see like a humble third or something if they get to like the Morgana. So
Third
that's
is
pretty
good.
good, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and if obviously if you spike the 8 witchcraft, still a good win condition.
Mhm.
Although I swear people have a way to counter it every single time that
Yeah,
go up against it.
I've not really noticed the witchcraft actually winning in my lobbies, but it does win in the stats.
Yeah. All right. There you go. All right. Talking about Eldritch, man, this seems to be your pet comp, or at least like you're one of the biggest believers in Eldritch. Almost everyone else I ever talked to are like, I don't get it, man. Eldritch does not feel good whenever they play it. It's still here in the A tier. So talk to me about Eldritch. Is it still good?
Yeah, I think specifically when you have like a really, really strong tempo opener for it and you can reroll for it, it's really good. And I think if you get like a mid game Eldritch augment or like a mid game emblem off of Krugs, it can pop off. Because if you get to Briar, I think the comp is really good. Although low key, I think I might have like a bad shapeshifter matchup thinking about it. Because it's kind of hard to like burst on all that high HP. But that's fine. That's only one of the players. I mean, I don't think it's like an amazing comp. I have it in A tier, not S tier, for a reason. Like, I think it's a very, very solid option for salvaging placements if you have like a strong Eldritch opener. But like, I'll put it this way: I think it's better to play Eldritch in a lot of spots when you have like a strong Eldritch opener than trying to pivot into like an unconditional four cost kind of thing. That might just be more like the other unconditional four costs are a little weaker, but I still think it's an option. I have played, and not on this patch, but on previous patches. I've done like double Rageblade Ash specifically in Eldritch. Hit 7 Eldritch, like you just get a lucky Briar in your 4-2 roll down, and then you can just sit on that for the entire stage 4, and then you go then you go 9 on like 5-2, and then full pivot to Callista. I think I did that like twice on old patch.
Wow.
It's
That's pretty funny.
no, it's actually pretty solid, but
Okay, that is some
I mean,
tech.
you have to have Briar on 4-2 is the issue. So
Okay. How hard can that be?
yeah, I don't know. Whenever I play this, like I'm always pleasantly surprised. I think the comp has like a lot of like hidden damage pretty much. And if you could ever get into the spot where you can actually reroll for like all the 3 stars, the scaling is still really good. I think they did nerf the scaling a little bit and buff some
A
other
tiny
things.
bit, but they compensated Buffett by making it scale better by stage later in
Oh,
the
okay,
game.
yeah. I don't know. I think the comp's fine. I'm happy where it is.
Okay. We got Karma. So what exactly is so much weaker about Karma and like Fiora Gwen, or just playing around all these different builds around Karma?
Well, the thing about Karma comps is even when they were very strong, it wasn't really Karma doing all the heavy lifting. It was like a combination of just the solid preserver core, and then you utilize either like legendary units like Briar and Diana, or like the Fjorgwyn to actually be the strong units on your board, and Karma just kind of there in the back, being your consistent DPS. So when they nerf stuff like Briar, they nerf stuff like Fiora and Gwen, it becomes like a little weaker or a lot weaker, pretty much, because the main strength of the comp is stabilizing stage 4 around Fiora Gwen mostly. That's like what you do in probably more than 90% of your games. So if they make that stabilization a little weaker, the comp is going to suffer a lot. Um, but again, if you roll up into your 4-2 and your roll down is like amazing, as you have the Fiora 2 Gwen 2, you are still going to be in a very, very strong spot to like top 3 in a game.
Yeah, it does feel like more important than ever that you are flush with a lot of items and
Mm.
money, because hitting the 2 stars is really important, but getting the items onto the warriors. And you have to remember that we're also in a meta where there's a mixture of 4 cost and reroll. So you used to get a couple of free fights in stage 4 where people were also kind of rolling for the 4 costs. And so maybe like, they have one upgrade, but sometimes you're going to run into the wall of reroll and other people who do hit. And so I do see a lot of these warrior preserver karma players struggle a lot because they just keep getting what they perceive to be nonstop bad matchups because everyone else is hitting. So I feel like this is definitely a comp that they have to be very careful about.
if you have like 1-star Fiora or 1-star Gwyn, which is like kind of ridiculous ass to have them both 2-starred on stage 4, but if you have 1-star neither of them against mages, like you're just gonna
You're just
cry.
cooked. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you just lose so much value on your board immediately when they get bursted down.
Last comp that we have here, we recently promoted this. It is Vanguard Hui, and this is one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Vanguard buffs. You reroll Hui and Mordekaiser, and you actually go for a secondary Bard, and not necessarily like the Ezreal Blasters. And so it's kind of leaning towards AP for the reroll here. What are your thoughts on Hui?
I'm not like the biggest fan of him, but what I'll say is like I feel like you end up in a way spots a lot of the time, just due to the weaknesses. I don't know. The thing is, I'm just not really a fan of playing unconditional rise or karma that much. So when I'm playing AP win streak and I don't have like a mage spot at all, I feel like more often than not it's just a Hoi angle, and then you can use that HP lead to like sack and roll for the 3 stars a little bit. But I don't know. It's not like so OP that when you hit, you win every single round. I think it's meaningfully weaker than a lot of the comps we've talked about already. It's like surprisingly stable if you hit a Kench on like the 2-star board, and that's like usually all you need to top 4 is like a surprisingly stable board on stage 4, and then early enough 3 stars on stage 5.
Yeah, just 2 stars. I've seen it be able to be very competitive, win 4 out of 5, maybe even 5 streak on stage 4 at times. As long as you have good Hui items and make sure you have good frontline items as well for Mordekaiser. Bard surprisingly puts out a pretty good amount of damage as well.
Yep.
I agree. I actually think that Hui is one of the comps that I play as well when I'm kind of like lost. Like when you get on like the make 'em cook portals and just like, what do I do? You can just play like AP win streak into Hui, something like that. Makes a lot of sense. The way we cap this board is usually Zera. Some people play like Ari as well and charm Ari for the AP, which is kind of nice. Is Hui positioning dependent? Because it seems like people want Hui on the same side as enemy carries, but sometimes he's like a little bit vulnerable as well. So do we think Hui this is actually going to segue into our main topic today, which is unit positioning? Do we want Hui to be same side as enemy carries, you think?
I believe he actually actually no. He what he does is he like positioning is like important on him, as in like the first part of his cast hits like his target and adjacent units, kind of like Soraka, like we talked about. So that's kind of important for like his first couple casts. But like the main cast where he bursts a lot of units and can sometimes hit backline, that's based on percentage HP of the units, not based on positioning at all. So like your
Hmm.
Hoi can be on the opposite side of the board, and if something is low percentage HP, like it can just snipe it. I actually had this come up today where I was playing 6 Vanguard Rise, so everything was above 100% HP, and then they had a Shiv, and the Shiv procced on my Rise, so the Hoi was just trained on Rise the whole fight, even though my Rise was literally on the other side of the Hoi. It just died. It was like very sad. But yeah, I like positioning only really matters for like frontline and avoiding what your opponent will do. It doesn't really come into effect with Hoi hitting the backline in particular.
All right, sounds good. Okay, that covers the top tier comps that we expect to see the most performance out of. We do have some comps in the B and C tier. In this B and C tier, are there any comps that you actually like or you think are underrated or sleeper techs that have potential to move up?
I mean, I don't like this comp, but I do recognize that Kassadin and Multi-Striker Reroll have like potential to pop off. It's like personally, I feel like it's just like a super risky line to take. And even if you do high roll everything, I feel like that comp very often like goes second or third anyways in like the most high roll spots, which is why I'm not the biggest fan of it, why I put it in B tier. But I know a lot of other players think the comp is good. So I'll give a shout out to that. I think the other comps are like just known not that good. I don't think there's like lots of. I don't think there's an argument for the other comps being
What
B.
happened to Varus? Did he just get over nerfed?
Yeah, it was 2 pyro nerf, 380 on Varus, and the biggest one actually is the Kench Arcana HP nerf. I think they could have just done the Kench nerf and then left everything else alone. That's what I actually suggested, that they change, like they revert Varus and then keep the Kench HP, because like the Arcana Varus is so weak. You need to hit every single 2-star, and even then you like still lose on stage 4, and then you need like a 3-item arc. You need like a 3-item Zerath randomly in your comp that you had to stabilize with 2-star 4 costs. Like it's just I don't like that comp.
Me neither right now. I feel like Varus is also somehow you still aren't hitting it because a lot of the shape players end up grabbing the Varus as well. So
Yep.
you're not even really uncontested anymore, even though it got nerfed.
When you load up into stage 4 and like you see who you're fighting, and then you see like double 4 cost 2 stars, like you're usually like shaken and you're complaining that you fought them. But if it's Varus Kench, a good amount of time you'll just beat them anyways. Like it doesn't even matter. Like you're not even scared.
Yeah, and they're getting stat checked nonstop by the shapeshifter players and things like that. So I don't really fear Varus nearly as much. I will say if you get like the trait tracker and like the dummy setups for it with wandering trainer, still can be really good. So it's not like it's unplayable, right? We don't want to give you the impression B tier is
Mhm.
unplayable. It's just you're not going to see them very often. If you do, they kind of have like the high roll opener or the stars aligning moments. My favorite of the B tier comp is I think Witchy Wallop is looking pretty good in the stats. And so far, when I've played Witchy Wallop, I actually have done really well with it. Partially because they buffed a bunch of Bastion verticals.
Mhm.
So they buffed 6 and 8 Bastion. And I think there's something there as well. We wrote this in our meta read for our Patreon, which is a newsletter that we do for our loyal subscribers for TFT Academy. And we said that there's probably a lot of potential in Bastions and either playing 6 or 8 Bastions. And hey, lo and behold, there's a lot of hero augments that are also Bastions. And that gives you a reason to play the low cost. Like part of the reason why Bastions always kind of feel weird is like you're playing so many 1 and 2 costs. But hey, maybe there's something there. My favorite combo, by the way, Dishsoap, I'm not sure if
Mhm.
I told you this last time, but apparently Suspicious Trenchcoat still works on hero augments. And so I actually put a trench coat on Poppy and I've averaged a 1. I've
Uh,
done it more than once. I've done it twice and I averaged a 1.0 and trench coat Poppy maintains Witchy Wallop. So you get 12 casts instantly and she just hops all over the place and she instantly assassinates the Callistas, the Rises. It's super funny, but it's also kind of good. So
yeah, for sure.
just dropping some tech out there. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think 8 Bastion is like actually broken. The problem is getting there because I think the other Bastion boards are like kind of terrible. So
Yeah, they
and,
are.
and the other problem with 8 Bastion is that even when you get the emblem and the Diana, I feel like it's not even good until level 9 when you can actually remove the emblem off like your backline carry in order to like free up a slot for extra damage. But I've seen 8 Bastion level 9 with like Rise 2 backline go insane. Yeah, like I actually think it's like just kind of broken. It's just it needs like a little, I don't know, like it needs a little push as in like if the other comps get nerfed and it doesn't get touched and stuff like that. I think it'd like low key be like a sleeper, like take over the meta next patch or something.
Yeah, the pathability of the tree seems really hard. Like, I just don't know how to get to the level 9. Like, am I play? I'm not like playing Golden Quest, am I? Like, I'm trying. How am I supposed to get to this spot where I have 3 5 costs upgraded with 8 Bastion? But if I can, the stats on it look out freaking rageous. So yeah,
Yeah,
keep an eye for it.
I played a game where I was playing Shapeshifter in scrims, and this is like me just like trying shit out. But I had a Diana on my board. My board was literally Diana Tarek. Those are the only bastions. And then I see Bastion Crest on 4-2. And I had my setup was like I had Trenchcoat with the Spark Augment. So I thought I could get like a bunch of just like spark damage, and then I decided to like sell all my shapeshifters, pivoted to 8 Bastion because I had the one Diana and have the sparks do all my damage. And it was actually pretty good. But then
Oh, okay.
no, it was like actually like really insane. I was beating everyone, but then there was some guy with double Zanyas on 7 mage with learning to
Oh,
spell. And then I fought them like twice and I went 5th. So people in chat were like laughing at my 8 Bastion comp thing I was trolling, but I was beating everyone else. Like I was literally beating everyone else. The comp was actually really good. Uh but then I fought like, yeah, I mean I can't beat double Zanyas, so
okay. I like it. The potential is there. You heard it here first.
yeah.
All right, that wraps up the meta segment. Let's go ahead and jump into fact or fraud. Fact or fraud, where I make some observations, usually data backed, and ask Dishsoap, is that factual? Is that fraudulent? First one, branching out is currently the best silver in the game at 4.27, even better than the staples, stationary support and precise planning. That fact or fraud?
But yeah, I think so. I think it gives you a ton of direction, and there's like very few trash emblems. Like Scholar used to be trash, Hunter used to be trash, Mage used to be trash, but those are like the best ones now. And like the old ones that like still used to be good are still good. They're not just randomly bad now. Let me just pull up the emblems real quick. Like is there? Let me just think the worst ones. The worst one is like multi striker, warrior, and preserver. Believe it or not, in the sets.
Preserver. Wow, and those are completely playable if you're able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
use them.
I'd say realistic worst ones is like probably like you know probably don't want to see Encanter. And I would probably reroll multi striker a lot of the time, but like everything else is just like completely playable. There's only two of them are worse than a 4.4 or like a 4.5. So basically just no low rolls, which is good.
All right, all right. So branching out, really, really good silver. In fact, the best. And again, this is stats taken from Masters Plus. Number two, and somewhat of a related second point here, precise planning went from 3 unit difference, whether it's win or lose, and 3 gold to 4 unit difference. You get 2 gold. So more lenient requirements to get activate gold, but you get fewer gold.
Mhm.
But the stats look exactly the same. And if you slice it in certain ways, it might even look like it got better in the stats. Is that fact or fraud?
I personally think it got like slightly worse, but it's still like a very good augment, one of the best augments. I think it's slightly worse, but you kind of just don't have to think about it anymore. I think the last augment you had to think about and actually play around. Like very often, I ended up like just frontlighting a random trash unit in case I fought
Yeah,
one of the
I
weaker
saw that.
players so that they could kill it. But I think if we did stuff like that, it's better than the current iteration. But this iteration, you just play completely standard and get a bunch of free money, which is very, very strong for a silver augment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like it's a somewhat side grade. It just feels like yeah, it's just
Mhm.
easier proc. But in the late game, what's kind of nice is that it feels more reliable to get like that extra 2 gold because 4 units is just much easier. In the late game, there's so much chaos; it's kind of hard
Yep,
to get 3. So I do
agreed.
like it a little bit better late game. All right, number 3. Best in slot Smolder doesn't include Rageblade. There's a lot of debate about whether or not Smolder actually wants Rageblade or not ever since the rework. Instead, you should be focusing on high AD items such as Giant Slayer, and I'm going to go through some of their deltas. Giant Slayer, Deathblade, and Runins, which is a negative point almost 6, negative 0.55, and negative point 0.5, and Rageblade is around negative point 0.2. So is that factor fraud? Do you actually want Rageblade or not?
I've really thought about them this much, but like I don't think I played the shape comps a lot. And I don't think I've ever had a rage blade on Smolder. Mostly because like I feel like I want some items that are good on Namzi and Varus in case like I want to carry like I carry Namzi in the mid game, and if I have Varus too, I'm gonna put items on Varus too. So that's like the main reason I don't make rage blade. But even then, like I don't think it's like that good in this unit. I think it's like all right if he's like scaling super late into the fights, but I think this unit can actually do some solid burst if you just give him full AD at the start. So yeah, I agree with this.
Okay. And I think there's a lot of people that do, and then there's also people in APAC and China that slam Rageblade almost no matter what and go out of their way to build it. It's not like it's a bad item. It's just that there's a lot of debate with Biss, and it sounds like Dishsoap's definitely saying you don't need it whatsoever to have
Well,
success.
the thing you have to realize about me is I'm very biased against Rageblade, like at all. Like when sets come out and like on PBE, I will I will have to wait until there's overwhelming evidence that Rage is actually good on a unit before I start building it. Because I don't know. Usually I feel like this item is like a base usually. And like sometimes it obviously isn't, but I don't know. I'm a Rageblade hater in general.
Wait, why is that?
Oh, I feel like usually I don't know. I feel like it's like the Twitch chat item. Like they just want Rageblade. Okay, it's actually gotten a lot better recently. But
Okay.
in previous sets, like even if you just had like a full like AD caster on your backline, they always want a Rageblade on them or on them. Like basically any backline AD unit, they would just be so confused if you don't get Rageblade. Like if this set was played 3 sets ago, like everyone would just be thinking it's like Rageblade Varus all the time, and it would probably have to be like a few patches for people to realize like that was trash. But I feel like people actually know that like it's not Rageblade Varus. But I mean, I'm trying to. It was like trying to think of like old AD units. Oh, it was like Zaya that one.
Yeah, so set 9, you're thinking
Yeah,
about
I don't
Vanquisher
remember.
Zaya. Or are you talking about set 7 with the
Oh
Rage
no,
Wing Zaya?
no, Rage Wing Zaya was actually pretty good. But like Vanquisher Zaya, what was set 11?
Set 11 was Kaisa
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Like
Ash. Ash.
yeah, I mean, it was actually pretty good on Ash. But like people definitely were building Rageblade on Kaisa for a bit. I don't know. I think it's usually better to be hesitant on that stuff.
I'm skeptical as well. One unit that I think people overrate is Rageblade on Rise. for example, I think that that's like a pretty classic example of what you're talking about, which is the people that play Rageblade Rise probably heavily overrate its impact when it's like a decent item, but not amazing. And it might be similar here with Smolders, but maybe even more pronounced because Smolder's a 5 cost.
Oh, the interesting thing about Rageblade Rise is like it's actually terrible on like this actually doesn't really make that much sense at first until you think about it deeper. But Rageblade Rise is actually terrible if you go above 2 Scholar, but actually like pretty solid on 8 Portal, like 2 Scholar. But like you would think like Scholar gets more mana per auto, you want to be autoing more, you want more attack speed, so Rage would be better. But it's actually the opposite because Scholar fights are super fast, or at least like 4 and 6 Scholar fights are super fast. So you just want like immediate impact, and Ridgewood is like slow to scale. And it's like different from Archangel because like Archangel actually provides you just like a lot of DPS even on like the second cast, which is like it's way more than Ridgewood. Ridgewood actually takes way longer to scale to something respectable. But on like the two Scholar like 8 Portal setups, like your team is like this big ass shield, but like you're not bursting anyone with that comp. So the Ragewood actually gets like a little bit of value. I don't think it's like BIS, but it's actually a lot better than it is in the Scholar variations.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay, that's a really good note. The difference between 2 and 4 Scholar.
But like it doesn't make like sense though, because like the original way I thought about it was that like attack speed might be better on more Scholar because you get more mana per auto, but it's just like the opposite.
Number 4, if you filter for low player compositions on Tactics.tool, there's only one comp right now at Masters Plus that averages better than a 4.0, which is Ari reroll with the Bastions. Is that fact or fraud?
Fraud. I think filtering for specific comps is super misleading due to like what they define as a comp due to sample size. I wouldn't really put that much weight into that.
Okay.
I legit like when investigating stuff and like prepping, I don't ever look at the comp stats. I think they're just too misleading, personally.
Yeah, I think that you're not the first person to bring up that they just don't look at like the comps page itself. They look at the Explorer, they look at augments, units,
Yeah.
items. They feel like comps can actually lead you somewhat down the wrong direction because comps almost just tells you like what's being played as opposed to what's good. And that could be something that helps push you actually in the wrong direction because you might be thinking, oh, well, this is what's popular and therefore it's good. I remember there was an example of this was before they buffed Hunters. A lot of people always used to ask, why would you play Preservers in Wukong Jinx and not just like Twitch and Olaf? Because it like naturally lends itself. And that's the variation we play now. At the time, they hadn't buffed Hunters and Preservers were way overtuned. But because everyone was playing that in the data, that's what the comp says to play. And so there's a lot of like misleading things about that comp speech you have to be very careful about because sometimes it's suggesting you the wrong versions. And that actually can have a cascading effect on other things. All right, last one. Worth the wait. One of my favorite new augments. This is the first one. Worth the wait 1. Averages a 4.4, which is a huge jump from 5.0. When you take it, it's always nearly worth chasing the 4-star that you get. Is that fact or fraud? I see everyone always chase it. Is it worth doing?
I feel like it's fine. You proc it on like either stage 5 or stage 6 if you get lucky. I think it's fine to chase the 4-star for like the 1 cost. I think the 2 cost it's debatable. Because 2 gold a turn is way different. Like giving up 2 gold a turn is way different than giving up 1 gold a turn, I think. But I mean, I've definitely seen people go for the 4 cost 2 stars or 4-star 2 cost as well.
What's your favorite worth the wait? Personally, have you taken it at all?
I've clicked the prismatic one twice. I got Zillion, and that was like super mid. Like, oh god, it was not that good. And I had like I actually had a pretty decent spot for it. I went 4th, but like it was just like a lucky 4th, pretty much. And then I got Shyvana, which was really insane. The thing is, I actually think I got weaker when I hit 4-star, which sounds crazy. But the thing I realized is I had 2 Shyvana 3s with like full build, and like they were good items. And what happened was I made a 4-star and then I moved the items to Briar, and then play like a Varus 1. But I felt like I got weaker because I had lost the second Shyvana 3 pretty much.
Interesting. Okay, fun food for thought. All right, so that concludes our fact or fraud. Let's head into the main topic for today, which is we want to take some time to talk about unit positioning individually and walk through, at least for today, the 1, 2, and 3 costs. Maybe in a future episode, we can do 4s and 5s because we just don't have time to do all the units right now. In general, there's a few buckets that we have for positioning. I usually define them as corner carries or corner units, frontline, especially solo frontline, top corner. So these are people that put like A1, A7, and then off-center units, which are like people that maybe don't want to be like exactly in the front center, and they don't want to exactly tank, so kind of a little bit off of the center focal points, and then just general backline. So let's start off with the one costs and talk about the corner carries: Ash, Namzi, Seraphine, Soraka, Twitch, and Zoe. And I think the way I want to work through this is outside of default positioning, where you just kind of put them safe in the corner, are there any tricks or small things about these units to consider? And maybe times we don't core them, or other things to think about?
Sure. Specifically, out of the ones you mentioned, out of these, I think Soraka and Twitch are the ones you probably want to move the most. I think the other ones just can stay in the corner the whole time and be fine. Soraka specifically cleaves off her ult, so if someone is putting a high tanky unit on their corner of the board, you can lose value out of like the cleave if you're just hitting that unit, and you might want to put it more in like the middle. So you're actually cleaving whatever's in the middle and like whatever gets grouped up in the middle. So I think it's possible that you want like Soraka in the middle instead of the corner sometimes.
Okay.
This is specifically if you're like your opponent is trying to play around you. And then Twitch, he shoots his bolt in a line. I think this was a lot more relevant after like before Twitch got nerfed. He actually got a pretty sizable nerf to his AoE in the previous patch, but beforehand it was like really, really important to get the lineups to actually hit multiple units. So you would often move them like one to the left, one to the right, like from the corner. You usually don't want to put in the middle because most people don't put their carries in the middle. But you kind of wanted to line up your Twitch in a way to where like it would ult their front line and their back line at the same time. So usually you would put it like one to the left or right pretty often. But those are the two I would probably move the most. The other ones can just stay in the corner, I think.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm playing a game of billiards or something when I'm playing Twitch. Just
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
like angle the pool stick correctly in order to get the right lineup.
Yeah, I actually hope they I honestly miss like Twitch being like OP because I actually like kind of like that positioning minigame, but I feel like you always itemize Namzi over Twitch now, and Namzi is just like you just put him in the corner.
Just whatever. Yeah, put her in a
Yeah.
corner, let her overkill. Okay, Blitz as a solo frontliner. I don't think we have to explain too much of this. He's just the best in general one cost tank at taking punishment, and he has really good synergy with things like Stoneplate. I don't really think there's much more we need to say beyond that.
Well, I think it's like important to understand the distinction of why solo frontlining is good, just in general. Especially on a unit like Blitz. It's mostly just like diverting all their damage into some form of mitigation, pretty much is like the main thing. And there's like a secondary reason as well. But if you have mitigation, if you have them going all to Blitz, like yeah, they're getting focus fire, but like all their damage is getting mitigated at least. The reason you want Blitz specifically solo frontline, even if he doesn't even have an item, is because Blitz actually provides basically no offensive damage on your team unless like it's like Hero Augment or like Honey provides a little bit, but he like passes the bees anyway, so it's not that big of a deal if he dies early. But like just him auto attacking is super super low DPS value, so he doesn't actually really contribute to the damage of your board most of the time. So you actually want him to die earlier, like compared to like another frontliner, so you're actually doing more damage throughout the fight.
Ah, okay, that's really interesting. Like
Um,
his role being a pure tank.
yeah. So you just rather have him die because he can't really contribute to the damage is the main thing.
Okay, okay. We have Elise and Warwick as top corner carries. Usually you put them just like the very top left or top right.
Mhm.
Uh, when do you not do that?
I think Elise is literally always in the top left or top right. I play the comp a lot. I don't think you ever want to put it somewhere else. You usually want to be same side as well. Warwick, I know since Warwick has like extra movement speed, there's like some cool tricks you can use for him to wrap, but usually people are putting him on the sides anyways, from what I've seen. But I've actually seen people like put Warwick like back some and have him run up so he doesn't take like that much aggro, at least in late game fights. I think early game it probably doesn't matter. But I know you have Jax Poppy in like the off center type role, but I actually think these are top corner units as well.
Ah, okay, okay, interesting.
I think both are tanky enough to take aggro, and they at least if you're like trying to like carry them at like 3-star level, or even just item hold them, I think they do more work on the top corner than just like putting them in off center.
They can, especially if you have the trench coats. Sometimes
Yeah.
they pop into the back line. It's pretty funny stuff. So I like that note. I like that note. One trick about Warwick that I see people talking about is that they actually put Warwick sometimes a little bit further back, because there's one thing really important about Warwick to remember is that there's a frost soldier that
Yep.
spawns, when the first unit dies. And that can mess with Warwick's targeting because the Frost Soldier might spawn and make him choose a different target. And you might see this weird thing where Warwick spawn, let's say you're top left, Warwick spawns a Frost Soldier, and then he runs all the way around as if he's trying to do like an audible in football, like trying to flank all the way around, and then he runs all the way back to the top left and you just wasted a ton of time. So there's some people that actually try to time things and mess with it. But it's not an exact science because I think there's a little bit of like 50-50 targeting with that makes it a little bit tricky. Okay, big time question. Jace. People say, do I frontline Jace? He's technically a range unit that transforms into melee. Is he always frontline? Is there ever times that you put him backline?
I usually put him like not in the front row. Like I don't put him in the back row, but I put him in like second or third row pretty often, like almost all the time. I don't really know why exactly I wouldn't even put him in the back, but I usually don't put him in the front either. The reason to put him in the front instead of the back is just to get him to cast faster. If like Jace reroll was viable at all, you just put him in the front so he casts basically. Like it wouldn't even matter if he took the extra damage. But for like item holder Jace and just like random Jace on your board for opener, I think it's actually pretty important that the damage he takes is mitigated because I believe he gains armor and Mar when he casts.
Yes.
So if you get him to cast just purely from like autoing, and he only starts to take damage when he's transformed, all the damage he'll take is going to be mitigated. Compared to like if you frontline him, he'll take like probably half of his damage unmitigated, so you lose like a little bit of value there. That's like the main reason.
The one thing about Jace positioning is that I'm pretty sure he's the GOAT of the support Thieves Gloves, Accomplice Gloves. This guy, like, it's actually just beast because you can put him in the front if you need. You can also put him in the back with like Locket and Chalices. There's no, but like that's not even an augment anymore. You get it off of Upgraded Adventure or Fortune, so not really a thing.
I miss that augments. I think they should bring it back.
Accomplice Gloves, yeah, I think so. Okay, we don't have to say much. Lilia actually kind of is like very similar to the hero arms we talked about. Ziggs. There's a lot of talk about Ziggs and using the A3 hull. People always talk about this every time I stream. Have you seen Leduk's video on Ziggs positioning? Is that bait? Like people talk about it in the early game. You could use it to draw a hole, snipe a corner unit by throwing the bomb through that hole in A3 and A5. Is that actually bait to do in the late game as well?
I don't know. Thing is, no one plays around it, even in high elo. I've actually gotten it to work a lot of the time. But the thing is, like Loki, if you're not exactly one shotting the backline, like say you're going against Rise, and say they actually have like more than just Rise as their team as their damage. Like if you kill Rise and 2 ults, but you're only hitting the Rise with the Ziggs bomb, it could Loki be not that worth it because you're only hitting 1 unit with both your ults, and then by the time your Ziggs is ulted twice, like the rest of your team is probably dead to like all of their other threats, kind of thing. Instead of just having them like AoE kill the front line and then front to back their team. But I think if people hump their backline, it's actually like still really really good. And very few people actually play around it still.
All right, so that's all the one cost. Let's talk about 2 costs here. So the corner carries that I had defined to start things off: Ari, Cassiopeia, and Syndra. Are there times where you're not cornering them as a default?
I don't think so. I think you can also do the same thing with Syndra where you can sometimes put her in the middle to like cleave and AoE more, but I think it's fine. Put her in the corner as well.
Okay. And then other backline carries, I have a couple of questions about. Kog'Maw. People talk about greeting Kog'Maw value a lot because Kog'Maw technically buffs adjacent allies, so people are always tempted to go carry Kog'Maw carry as their backline. And then if you're primary Kog'Maw, do you put them in the corner? So how do you actually weigh that greed versus a full corner?
I pretty much always just put them like full greed, the triple value. But if you're going against someone who has a lot of AoE punish, I mean, this is specifically like when you're like playing Jinx. You can either like just put Kog'Maw next to Jinx or just like completely declump them to like keep Jinx alive, and then have Kog'Maw buff like the other support units instead. But I usually full greed unless there's like something pressing where I don't want to greed it, basically.
If you're in a situation where you're primary Kog'Maw, do you still full greed or are you cornering at that spot?
I usually greeted it, but I've usually greeted it, yeah.
Okay, man, he's a little bit of a greed lord. I like it.
Yep.
Tristana is not really a carry these days. Even in Molten Caramel, people aren't really primarying her anymore. But there's one thing cool about Tristana is that she actually can knock back units.
Mhm.
And so some people are situationally using Tristana to put her in the second row and knock back some tanks. What are some situations that you would do that?
I really haven't been doing this. Maybe I should be, but it would probably just be. Wait, does it knock back? Oh, you said second row. Okay, second row. Yeah. The thing is, like, I don't know if it casts before the Kench. Kench would be the biggest one because if you can displace him, he'll end up like wasting. Like he'll like make his cast like in like a worse spot. But the issue with that is I just don't think Trist is gonna cast before Kench because Kench is taking aggro and Trist would have to auto a bunch. What I have done with Trist is I put her in like the center and I have like positioned my team in a way that like Shyvana dashes toward the center, like specifically in the Shyvana versus Fairy matchup, and then the Tristana will like basically always knock the Shyvana back because it'll gain mana from the Shyvana, and then it'll like knock it away from the Callista. So that's like a cool thing you can do.
Okay, okay. I've also seen Tristana used in the Callisto Mirror, where you can like knock back Rakan and sometimes get some really nice walk ups where Callisto walks up and stops targeting the enemy Rakan and starts targeting other units.
Oh yeah, that could
Um,
be good. I could see it.
so that's a little bit of tech there if you want. All right, these other units, Akali, Nunu, Rumble, Shyvana, I wrote them as off center. The first question, I think we talked about this
Mhm.
very early in the set, which is like, is there a way to actually make units like Akali and Shyvana consistent? I feel like they kind of just wander off wherever they want sometimes.
Yeah, like Shyvana defends so much in like what your opponent's doing, and currently I haven't figured it out exactly. But what I've been doing is either just putting her default in the middle, but if people are like leaning towards one side or another in my pool, I'll like shift the Shyvana one to the left or right, from just top middle. That's what I've been doing mostly. Akali, that unit is still like kind of misread to me. I usually just put her like one or two off from like either corner, pretty much, and you just hope that she gets there in the back.
Yeah, ironically enough, I think one of the problems with Akali is when she gets too much mana to cast again, because then she dashes away.
Yep.
There's a funny stat that's been floated around, which is in the very secret, low key, one of Akali's best artifacts, I believe, is it Corrupt Vampiric Scepter because she doesn't cast, and then therefore she can like actually finish off her targets instead, which is pretty funny. I can't remember if it was this one or one of the other ones. Maybe it was like Silver Mirror Dawn or something like
Well,
that.
well, the thing is, it's not like one of her best artifacts. It's like
Or sorry, it works on her in that way.
it's not one of her best artifacts, but she's one of the only units where it's like negative delta on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. That's
on
what.
every other unit, corrupted vampiric scepter is like just terrible on her, and for Akali, it's like mid, which just means her cast is like kind of worthless. Yeah.
All right. Cassidon, oh, same thing. Usually top corner, trying to break past, get to the enemy back line as fast as you can. Neela is usually second row. I don't know if there's any tricks with Neela that you have.
I think. I mean, not in this meta because mages will just completely counter you if you do this. But I think putting Neela in like the top corner can used to be a very good way to get to the backline, especially against stuff like Rise and Karma, where like they're not doing that much burst to you. I feel like just the way she dashes, she just ends up in the backline if you like same side on the top left or top right. But if you do that against Veigar, you're insta dead. Even if you have like an Edge of Night, you're insta dead as soon as they killed like the next unit. So I
Yep.
would not do that in this meta at all.
All right, all right. And then last but not least, we have Zillion.
Mhm.
Zillion can be super clutch, and oftentimes where he's positioned can actually swing the fight in the late game. Any tricks with Zillion, or are you just generally trying to like position him in front of the enemy tank?
Okay, usually you just want him to be locked into the tank, but specifically in the Callista mirror, you want your Zillion on the same side as their Callista. Because what happens is like when the front lines like collapse and stuff, and like your backline like starts hitting their backline, you if you can land a Zil bomb on the Callista, the fight is just over for one player or the other. Like it's like something like you might think that might not happen because like oh like the front lines are all dead and like how you're actually gonna land a Zil bomb on the Callista, but I actually think it's relevant. Like I've pulled this out in like 3 or 4 1v1 so far, and it's worked pretty much every time.
You're telling me that he just Steph Curry rainbow shots and just
Oh no
somehow
no
gets the bomb all across the map?
no! Like this is like 20 seconds into the fight.
I
Like
see. I see.
basically like after the fight gets simplified through a lot of time and a bunch of units die, like it doesn't really matter if your Zillion is hitting like their Milio or their Tristana or something if you just had them in the middle. But if you're if you're same siding the Zillion on the same side as Kalista, because Kalista is always going to be cornered. If you can get that late game backline cast off, like when Zillion's in the backline, if you can get that cast on the Kalista, you just win the fight. Doesn't really matter how the fight went beforehand, because just being
Ah,
down that much uptime will just swing
all
it
right.
completely.
Okay, that's all the 2 costs. Let's briefly go over 3 costs as well. And 3 costs are actually a lot more
Mhm.
consolidated, but we did talk about one of them, Hui, which is ironically enough, maybe you don't want Hui on the same side. There's a couple different things you can do it. Maybe Shiv's a lot better in Hui for that reason. Jinx, Ezreal, Bard, and Veigar, those are the other backline range carries that people traditionally corner.
Mhm.
Any notes about any of these units?
I don't think frontline Ezreal is like optimal in like the late game, and I don't think you want to like build healing on him in order to get to that game state. But I will say, I think like I actually don't do this often enough, but you could actually put Ezreal in the front line in like the early game, because he's not going to get bursted down by anything in the early game basically, and especially if you have like a portal shield, he's basically never going to die. And the reason to do this is like he gets mana, it gets faster casts, and there's also like not a lot of backline access. So even if he takes like a big chunk of damage, he'll dash back on his cast, and there's not really anything that can finish him off. And the reason you would want to do this outside of just getting the mana is that you're kind of like artificially giving your team, like your frontline, extra HP. Because if they can't actually capitalize off the damage that they do to the Ezreal, that just kind of means your frontline gained however much HP the Ezreal took. So that's like a little way to like squeeze a little bit of extra value in the early game. I think I actually don't do it enough. I think it's like usually optimal to frontline the Ezreal on like stage 2 and stage 3.
I like that. I like that. I will say that if you do get the crazy what the forge scenarios, you still can frontline Ezreal. It's something that China does very often. They get Silvermere Dawn, Death Defiance, and then like Manazane.
Yeah, so like I can for sure see it with Silvermare.
Yeah, it's really crazy if you get it off. And even Ezreal 2 in stage 4 is like completely fine when you do that. All right, the frontliners. We have Vex Wukong, usually solo front,
Mhm.
and that makes a lot of sense because they scale off of. Well, they used to both scale off of targeting, but now Wukong is just kind of a draining thing. Nothing really too much to note. The one thing I do want to say on this is that sometimes people, when they say solo front, they purely just kind of always leave it in A4. And sometimes if you are like hard leaning aside, people can take advantage of that and wrap, especially if you spread out your back line. So sometimes
Yeah.
you actually do want to lean it maybe a little bit one to the left or right at times.
Yep. Also, sometimes when you solo frontline, you don't even solo frontline. Like you put the quote unquote solo frontline unit where the enemy team is positioned mostly, so you're like taking aggro from their strongest side, but you still have other units in the front line in order to like hedge into other matchups. I think that's like usually what I end up doing, especially with like mages and Vex. I don't think I've ever actually like in the full solo frontline into Vex. It's usually like I have Vex taking the side where the damage is, and then I'll have the Mord and Galio on like the left, or like on the other side.
All right. All right. I like that. And then Mord, Nico, Shen, Swain, Katarina, Hecarim, I put them as all like off center carries or off center units in general. I don't think there's anything special. The only thing I will say is that Shen, you have to keep in mind, targets the 3 closest units. So sometimes you might even far corner him and maybe try to snipe an enemy carry if you can do that.
Yeah. This is not 3 costs, but this is also a thing with Galio and the 2 costs. I think Galio and Shen very often can be top left or top right corner because of the reason you mentioned. Galio shoots like furthest unit in range, which is very different than Shen targeting. But what that means is that if he's same side as the enemy and you put him in the corner, if they don't have a specific, if they don't have a unit that matches you on the corner, so if he like walks up even a little bit, he'll like the farthest unit will be whatever in the corner on the same side. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but basically, if Galio walks up at all, if you're same side as their enemy carry, he'll like, end up stunning them, which is super value. And then Shen
I'm
will,
following.
yeah, and then Shen will ult closest, so you also kind of want him in the corner in the case that like the closest unit is in the corner. I think putting those units in the corner just to get the CC off is good.
All right, sounds good. That concludes our low cost unit positioning section. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with pop quiz and some Q&A. Pop quiz. You ready? How do you feel this week? More prepped?
No.
All right, well, don't worry. Some of these are, again, pretty straightforward, and then there's a couple of tricky ones here.
Not gonna
The
lie.
first one, what's up?
Oh no, I was gonna say that like most of the stats I've looked at were just like the Shyvana stats, but those stats are not even. Those stats are so fake because they're so low sample. But we'll see.
Okay, don't worry. I think you're gonna get some of these. I have
All
faith.
right.
I have faith. All right, question one.
Mhm.
What is the best performing 3-cost 3-star in raw AVP right now? Best stats on the 3-cost 3-stars.
Let me pull up the league clients real quick so I remember what these units are.
We just walk through every 3-cost as well.
Well, immediate thing that comes to mind is like mages, but like I don't think it is either Vex or Vagar. Like there's probably just something Loki that is. I'm actually kind of leaning Mord because I think if you get 3-star Mord in mages, it's amazing. Same thing with like hitting Mord and Hui, and it's also like a very contested unit. So I feel like if you can 3-star that, like you're just chilling. So I'm kind of on Mord. It might still just be Vex though, but yeah, I don't know. But my mind's on Mord or Vex. Let me just look at these other units real quick. I mean, there's it like I would used to say Hecarim, but Hecarim got all those nerfs, so maybe not anymore. I mean, there's like Jinx Wukong as well. Ah, shit. There's kind of a lot. There's like Bard, which is like Bard 3 is not amazing, but if you hit Bard, you're probably in like some crazy spot. I'm gonna go with my gut and say Mord, but I'm probably wrong.
Mord is really close. He's right there behind Bard as number one. Bard is the hardest. It's a little bit of a gap, but then it's like Vex Mord exactly like tied at second by like 1/10, and then the rest. So
I mean, I'll take it. I like kind of. I mean, I wasn't that far off. We'll take it.
yeah, you weren't that far off at all. I mean, you're basically naming every single of the best candidates. Okay, let's try this one. Question number 2. What is the new highest win rate augment in the game currently? It's once again shifted.
Oh,
it used to be like the golden quests. It used to be like flexible. Now we have a new highest win rate augment in the game. Dispatch. What is it?
Oh, is it just learning to spell? Probably. I'll go learning to spell.
That is correct. It's learning a spell at a whopping 24%, clearing everything. It's actually insane. Next highest is I think like the golden egg, but it's never real.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like the best AVP augment in the game by far probably is the best win rate.
Yeah, I mean not always true, but yeah, that in this case it is very 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 much the truth. Because sometimes like flexible was like also the highest win rate, but also just like pretty mid average placement, I think. Okay, question number 3. What is currently the most built item in the game? Craftable. What is the most built craftable item in the game at the moment? I'm taking Masters Plus again. That's usually what I try to do for our criteria.
I mean, it's usually Shojin, Ginsu, or BT, like always. I don't know. Oh, it might be. Oh, sometimes it's Stoneplate though, isn't it? It's one of those 4. Crap. Like it just depends on like what comps people are playing. Like if people are playing a bunch of Kalista and Jinx, it's Rageblade. If people are playing a bunch of like the melee stuff, it's BT. And then if people are playing a bunch of like mages and stuff, it's just like Shojin.
It's not close this patch. Usually it's a lot closer in other patches, but
yeah, I don't actually know the frequency of the comps being played. I'm actually gonna guess Stoneplay because Wukong, Jinx is a meta, Vex is a meta, and like Rakan Stoneplate's a meta. I'm gonna say Stoneplate.
That is correct. It's the only item that's in the 4s of play rate. Everything else is 3s and below. So 4.3, and then the next highest is Shojin at 3.6. A lot of stone plays every single game. It's crazy. Yep. Highest of the set. Nice job. Okay. Question number 4. A ton of prismatic augments got nerfed, and there's a lot of bad prismatics now.
Oh, if you're asking what the worst one is, I know this one.
Oh, okay. What is the worst performing prismatic augment in overall AVP?
As a certain streamer would say, support Golem.
It is. Support Golem at a 4.9, almost pushing a 5. Oh, what'd they do to my boy?
Yeah.
Why'd they even keep it? Didn't they just delete this at this point?
Well, like I asked like why this augment like didn't get any compensation. They just said that they like didn't have like time to add it pretty much for like the localization and stuff. So I think they're probably gonna add like an item item component or some gold to it or something to make it
An
appealing.
item component. It's like Rod and Zeke's. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, I mean, I think if you add an item component, it's like a 4.6. So it's not even that bad.
Wait, I'm misunderstanding. You mean an item component that you can use? I thought you meant an item component on the golem.
Oh yeah, and then I've also seen people suggest like you just give it like a crown guard as well.
Okay.
I think there's definitely ways to make it viable if you like without having it to be two support items. Because the thing is, like, it's the worst augment in the game, but honestly, 4.9 for the worst augment in like worst prismatic in the game is not even bad. Usually, the worst prismatic is in like the fives comfortably, and like 4.9 is. I mean, you're never taking it, but it's not like completely terrible, I guess. Like not unsavable. What I'll say.
For some comps that you are desperate needing frontline. So, for example, I was in a spot with Wukong Jinx, and I was looking at all my bad prismatic options. But support golem is like one of the things that you would want in that comp. It's like a 4.4 in that comp. It's like it's worse. It could be worse. It's like if you have absolutely complete garbage, like maybe you have to take something like that from time to time.
Also, speaking on some other bad prismatics, I don't think it's gonna be buffed because I won worlds with it, but I think birthday present is like really bad without encounters. I think I won worlds with it, so like they think they're probably not gonna buff it. But
it's
I
also
think
a fun augment. So
yeah, maybe they don't want it to be OP. But I was looking at the worst placements. That was one of them. So
all right. Last one. This one's probably the trickiest one. If you filter for Wukong and What the Forge, and you're going to be itemizing Wukong in this comp, so it could be a bunch of different ways, but mostly like the Wukong Jinx or the whatever. What is the Exodia setup? Like, what are the ideal artifacts that you can get for Wukong, What the Forge, and assuming you get to pick the artifacts that you want?
We're locking in Locket. I know that's one of them. 100%. I know some of this because I didn't have What the Forge, but I had like double. This was such a high roll. I had a spin to win, and then I got a prismatic orb on wolves that's just 2 artifact infills. And I didn't have any Wukong items before this, so I just got like a full like Exodia build and I just won the game for free pretty much. It was disgusting. But I remember looking at the stats for this. I know it's Locket for one of them. I believe Silvermare is one of them as well. I'm locking in Locket Silvermare. And I don't know if Wukong shields enough for Idol to be good. Because Locket Idol is the crazy setup on... Is there duplicates allowed?
Yes.
Okay, it's Locket Idol if it's duplicates allowed.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Oh, you were so close. It's actually Locket Idol.
Oh, okay.
Locket Idol. It's like each idol or each Locket was like minus entire placements. It was insane. So if you go Locket Idol, it's just a straight 2 in the 2s. So insane combo if you can get it.
Yeah, I remember seeing double Idol Locket on like Rakan and Vex actually going infinite.
Yeah.
Like today in scrims, I literally saw Vex 2 with Locket Idol 7 mage beat 10 portal because it just healed infinite and the portals couldn't even kill it, and the Vex just like autoed everything to death. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I'm like low-key a little surprised double Locket's better, but honestly not that much.
Well, I just sent it to you if you wanted to look at it because.
Oh no, I believe you. I believe you 100%.
Yeah, but just in case you were curious about like the gap, it was.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a huge gap. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yep. All right, pretty good round, Dishsoap. I think you actually crushed that one, so I think we'll call that one overall a win. Okay, let's wrap it up with just quick Q&A. We just got one for today to wrap it up from Owl. He asks, so now that we're nearing the end of the set, what is your personal evaluation of charms? Did you enjoy them? Do you think they make the game better in some way? And what are some ones that you like more than others?
I personally think charms are fine. I think the thing that I like about charms the most, I think other people do too, is that they're just not that impactful, which like sounds wrong, but it just means that they don't like interrupt the main gameplay loop of TFT where other set mechanics kind of did. So I think that's kind of nice, but for others it could just be kind of boring. I think the parts I'd like about charms the most is when it like influenced your decisions to roll when you normally wouldn't. I think that's like super interesting, especially in like the mid game. And I think like when you're not in the late game, I think the balance between like picking an econ versus a combat charm is actually like super interesting. But once you reach to the late game, you're like kind of only looking for combats, and if you see an econ, you're like really sad. So that's like the part where I don't enjoy is mostly the late game of charms. I think it's like can be extremely swingy, and then also like rewards having a bunch of money for like low roll charm protection, which is a little weird. And the thing I also dislike, and like no one bitches about this because I swear no one scouts charms ever, like myself included. So like they don't even know they should be bitching. Is the 2-1 charm?
I know where you're going with this.
Like if there's like a handful of them where you just don't like you either click them and get nothing, like you get a crystal ball or whatever, or you
Yeah.
get like Shivanate, but you don't want to spend 1 gold because your board is trash. And then but then someone else just gets like a free 1 cost shop charm. And like it might sound like I'm just like over exaggerating, but that's actually like a huge swing for no reason. I don't know. I actually
It
like
feels good when
but
you're the player that gets the free reroll
yeah,
and you
yeah.
hit.
But the
Doesn't it
thing
feel
is,
great?
oh yeah, for sure. But the thing is, like, no one is aware that they're being like. I
They're
don't
getting
see anyone
cheesed. Yeah.
complaining, but no one is aware they're getting scammed because like. I mean, no one scouts charms ever, so you don't even know. Like at least with augment, like you can see that like someone got a broken augment, and you got a shit one, but you like no one's even looking for the charms, so like they don't know they're getting ripped off.
Yeah, I know, I know. The reason why I'm laughing is because I actually brought this up on the coach stream. I was like, how come no one complains about this charm? It feels like so impactful to me. And then someone typed in chat, nope, Dishsoap complains about it every day.
Yeah,
That is the Dishsoap patent complaint right now. This set.
I think it would legit be fine if they just okay. First of all, remove crystal ball or like put it on like late stage 2 or stage 3. Like I don't know. Like crystal. Like who needs a crystal ball on 2-1 man? Who is that for? Ah,
I guess
but yeah,
for the people that want to figure out if they can get away with like
yeah. Like
certain positioning thing or loose streaking, I guess, but whatever.
well, I mean, you take it like the only actual use of it is to like see if you need to level or not. You can maybe get value out of that, but I mean that is so super minor compared to just every other effect.
Yeah, I agree. I generally agree. Maybe would it be too strong if you get to see your next 2 opponents? Maybe.
Oh, I don't think so. Honestly, I'm not for that. Agreed.
Okay, I mean that might be better. So give you a little bit of extra lasting effect. Did I enjoy charms? I do. I actually, this is my favorite set mechanic since augments themselves. In terms of just the way it makes me engage with TFT. I think what I really don't like about charms, or sorry, what I really don't like about set mechanics is when they are so warping that it's just very in your face, and you're forced to confront a different game state that you don't really want to be in the first place because it's just like so hard to actually deal with. So with encounters, for example, you would have an encounter carousel with all rating items. And that just like kind of create a situation where you got punished for loose streaking, or you just had no pickable rating items or artifacts or things of that sort. Those mechanics, I think, were too they're just too upfront and too game warping. And so when we say low impact, I agree with this. So I really like that charms are small but thoughtful ways that you can engage with the game. And it's optional. You can actually pass it. Like you don't have to buy charms. I mean, a lot of times you do because it's free or it's really easy to, but you also have the choice in your roll down, right? The dynamic of like, am I buying this charm before my roll down? Some people like delay it, right? Like I'm gonna wait for the round to start, then buy the charm so I can make my roll down efficient, make it easy. I really like that kind of stuff. The swings of it, I mean, I personally don't mind nearly as much to the length of this, so maybe because I'm not a competitor, but I do think that the late game charms have been toned down a lot. I really like that this was please out of the game. Thank goodness they tried to reintroduce it, but they brought it back out. Thumbs up for that. But for the most part, I think this is going to go down in history as one of the best mechanics that they've ever done. And I wouldn't be mad if they brought it back as long as they made it different. If they just brought it exactly the same way, like Chosen Headliner, probably no thank you. But if they could make it a little bit better, I'm more than happy to play it again. I don't know, 2 years from now, something like that. Something similar to Set 4 and Set 10.
Yeah. What I will say is I don't think this should be a permanent thing, like charms and portals. I think if you have like or like augments and portals, I think if you had like augment, portal, and charm baseline, and then you just add like whatever other set mechanic in, like it just gets way too
Too
complicated.
much. Too
But
much reading, man. That was my first
yeah,
complaint about charms. When I was giving feedback, I was like, I'm like spending my first 10 hours just reading. Like I'm not even actually playing the game. But the more I played it, the more I really loved the mechanic. So I like it. The bonus question here from Owl was anything you wish that they would change or add. I had one really dumb idea that I keep advocating for, which is it's like 50 gold, and only gets offered in like stage 4, but you can conjure a golden egg. And so you don't know how many turns it takes to cash out. There's no way for you to tell you. But if you just spend it, you'll just get a golden egg, and you can like all in there. And I think it's probably going to be a terrible, like probably like a 6 point something AVP and terrible win rate. But I just think that we could use a little bit more fun like that, because I think about Conjure Emblem, and I think about like some of these other really funny charms that people always get baited into taking into. And I think we could use like 1 or 2 more of those.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have that answer, but um, I think they were trying. Okay, so this is something I've like actually like asked like Nico about, but like they've added like a few of these charms where like they scale based on how many of the same charm you've bought. For example, like the coin toss, you get like an extra gold for however many things you
That's
got if
fun.
you bought it before. And there's one that gives you XP. It's the same thing. But like I feel like it's actually super infrequent when these things actually show up. And I've only seen like you only seen it more than once a handful of times. And I feel like you almost I mean, at least I've never seen it more than twice. And I feel like they should probably increase the rate you see that charm if you clicked one previously or something. So that you can actually get like the scaling bonuses. Because I feel like it could actually be like a pretty like neat thing to see sometimes, but it's just something that really never comes up at all. And I think that's kind of lame.
Yeah, fair enough. I had definitely seen that as well. All right, great episode, Dish Soap. That wraps it up. Any closing thoughts before we head into the final regular season event, and then we're at regionals?
I mean, my mind's blank right now, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the episode.
You're gonna be back streaming soon, yeah? Like playing a lot ladder, because you're gonna be free from snapshots.
Yep, that is the plan. I'll be live probably. I mean, I'll probably take a nap, and I'll be live after I wake up.
All right, sounds good. Ready to see you grind and crush it. All right, a big thank you to everyone who also supports our Patreon. You are already seeing this early compared to everybody else. Site wouldn't really happy without you guys and the support. And make sure you guys check out our either YouTube version of this. If you're listening on Spotify, it's youtube.com/@TFTAcademy with 2 Ys. Or if you're watching this, we also have a Spotify feed. You can check us out there, as well as Apple Podcasts and a few other places for audio only in case you're traveling. But that's it from Frodan and Dishsoap. This has been TFT Study Hall. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
See ya.